gonna come up with an artist name for you,
bro.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think I do remember that. And you know what? It's wild too, because like I'm very like, it's such a weird thing as a band or as like an artist trying to pick a name, because like it doesn't matter that much. I don't think like like in some ways you can make arguments that it matters, like, oh, it should be searchable, nobody else should be using it. But then like you can just be like Dave from the UK and his name is just Dave, and like he's a massive artist. So it's like, I'm not sure how much it matters like what your name is, and like people have the most ridiculous band names or like artist names, and yeah, it's more, I think, about just like the way you present it, or like the way you like build your persona or brand identity, or like market it, or whoever your audience is.
Totally. Yeah, it's not one thing. Like the name's not going to make or break you. You still have to have all the other ingredients totally dialed in and figured out to be successful, to get out there, to make your name. That makes me think of like another one namer. There was I don't know if he's still around, but there's a rapper named Kyle, just one, like by Kyle, had some songs with Trippie Redd and stuff like that. And I don't know if he's still around, but like, it's a pretty fucking common name. Just made it work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, good times. And back then you settled on Ty Zeta, if I'm not mistaken. That was
the
rapper
that was
name
Ty Zeta, yeah.
And you were like, when we met, you were like deep into hip hop and you were MCing, and now this is the first time we've actually hung out in a decade, I think, which is crazy.
It's crazy to me that it goes by so fast. Like,
so fast.
I meet people now and Nimbus comes up, or like, I'm like, yeah, I went to Nimbus, and I'm like, in 2013.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy
yeah.
Like, wow, it went by really fast.
So fast. So much has happened. So much has changed.
So much has changed, especially in music, and like, yeah. But you were asking me about hip hop, and like, I guess you're kind of like leaning towards like, how did you go from hip hop to like?
Yeah, now you're in a metal band.
Yeah, so like I was always into metal and like hardcore and punk growing up. Like, I started going to hardcore and punk shows when I was like 13. Out in Langley, they used to have like punk shows and hardcore shows, and so I got exposed to it really early, and I got into it really early. And then I was playing in bands like a little bit, but then like they just stopped having shows at the community center there in Langley for whatever reason, and they stopped booking them. And so like I kind of stopped going, and then just got into other stuff. Like I got into making beats and like freestyling and rapping and just like hanging out with my friends. So I kind of like stopped playing bass and making band music really, or being interested in that for a while.
Yeah.
And then in like 2017, I was living in Vancouver, and I was like going through some personal stuff, and I just kind of like started exploring. Like, I never really stopped exploring it, but I was just like bored, I guess. And I was like, I want to find new music, because I love finding new music. So I was like, what's going on in hardcore? What's going on in punk? What's going on in metal? And I started just like seeing if there was anything happening in the city, and there was. And I like started going to local shows, and then I went to like my first show, and I like just was stoked on the energy and stoked on the bands. And I was like, after I went to my first like Vancouver hardcore show, I knew I wanted to start a band, and I knew I wanted to like be involved in the scene, and I just kept going to shows and didn't stop.
Yeah.
And now I'm here.
And got immersed in the culture. And so interesting. So you kind of have come full circle, because you, like you were saying, before you were into hip hop, you were, kid going to, metal shows and stuff like that. And now here you are again. It's come all the way around. I know for me, I have an explanation of the reasons where I stopped MCing and making my own music and transitioned to being an engineer. There's all sorts of circumstances, but for you, like, how far did you take the rapping thing before you were like, okay, now we're just like I'm not writing verses anymore?
Yeah, so like that's a good question. So basically, I mean, what happened with like rap and like hip hop for me is like I just like lost interest, and like I was also just like dealing with a lot of personal stuff. Like by the time I was like in my early 20s, I was like super depressed and like anxious and just like not didn't have a really stable relationship at the time, and I just wasn't passionate about making music to the point where I wasn't. And I resented myself for that. I'm like, I love music and I love making music, but I'm not doing it. And like, I don't believe in myself that I can do it. And then like, I was like, well, like, what can I do? I'm like, I can play bass and like, I like this music. So maybe I can start like getting back into like hardcore and punk and metal and I see. Start doing that stuff again. And yeah. And then like, I did start a band. I started a band called Culminate in 2018. And then we were a band. We still not really a band anymore. We're just kind of on hiatus. But once the pandemic hit, there was no more band stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was like home alone, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do? I'm like, well, I'm gonna make solo music again. So I started making solo music again and just exploring that again. And like, it's almost just like a time thing for me now. It's like I have limited time and like limited energy, like mental space to be like, I can only focus on so much at once.
I see.
So like I did release one song as a solo artist. And I do have like 5 or 6 other songs. I just like don't have the energy or the time to like focus on it because I'm so busy doing band stuff now.
I see. Yeah. So it's a natural evolution, right? Like it just happened. And it's not, I guess, not a conscious decision to say stop, but it's like, where are your priorities at really at the time? And what do you choose to focus on the most? Now, do you find like any of those two genres have helped with each other? Like your knowledge of like percussion with hip hop, or, you know, do either of those things overlap, do you find?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, especially in, maybe not so much in metal, but definitely in hardcore, like there's like hardcore and hip hop have always kind of like historically been genres that are like kind of side by side and live together. Like, especially in the early days, like in New York, there was definitely a lot of punk and hardcore shows where there was like hardcore kids and punks and like hip hop kids and like everybody kind of mixing.
Yeah.
So I think that's why hardcore kind of appealed to me in the first place, is just because of the culture, because like they kind of come from the same place. Like hardcore comes from like DC and New York, and like so as far as the overlap, like
like when you're producing, for example, or making a song, like, does it help that you were an MC for years?
For lyrics, yeah.
For lyrics,
like,
maybe.
If I need to write lyrics for a band, yeah, like, because I spent so much time like writing raps, like it's definitely helpful. And I guess like the first instrument I learned how to play was the bass. So maybe I have a better sense of rhythm than some guitar players.
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. Some people can be the judge of that.
So the band you're in now is called A Mourning Star.
Yeah.
And that's in Apple Music, it's under metal, right?
Yeah. So A Mourning Star is like, the band started off with the idea that it's kind of like old school metalcore. So which means like in the 90s, before like metalcore was kind of like very commercialized or popular or like studio friendly, it was basically like bands were starting and combining elements of metal and hardcore and like making this sound that was like its own thing. So the first EP basically was influenced by that, like a bunch of old bands like Undying and like early Poison the Well and like that kind of stuff. Yeah, and like it's really funny because like it's a good testament to how cyclical music is, because we started this band, and like within like the last couple of years, the same time that we started this band, there's a whole bunch of other like revival core bands popping up.
Oh, really?
Like that are doing the same thing. So it's cool. It's like, it's cool that there's like people who still appreciate like a certain kind of sound, or like, yeah.
Even though foundational genres have split off into so many other things now, like they're like what hip hop was when I grew up now has like 14 subgenres, right?
Yeah.
You know, I forgot what I was going to say about I kind of lost my train of thought. Okay, so we were talking about metalcore.
Yeah.
And and how other bands now are coming out and reviving that style. I've noticed like still that there are some bands or artists that are still doing like what I would call quote unquote real hip hop, like authentic hip hop, which is great to see. And there's still like a niche market for that. Like people like myself that are in their 30s, I can still go in like Logic's new album, The Vinyl Days. That's like hip hop, like hip hop straight up. And it's like, oh, that's great. Like I love that that's still, people are still making that, you know?
Yeah. And to talk more about hip hop, like I feel like music now is in a way better place than it was like 10 years ago when we were at Nimbus, like just as far as being accessible and like people having the ability to make something good on a low budget or like by themselves and be able to reach an audience and connect with a fan base that like they might not have been able to without more help or more money. And like even in hardcore right now, like there's a lot of bands doing kind of like the rap core thing again, like almost new metal, but like hardcore with like rapping. And it's cool. Like I just went to Sound and Fury in Los Angeles, and it was the most insane music festival I've ever been to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Like, so it's cool. Like, I mean, some people think it's corny, but like, I think it's cool. Like, I don't care what people do. I like it.
I remember when I was an editor for Hip Hop Canada, and they would send me to different shows to do like live reviews for the website.
Yeah.
And I saw legends, like I saw Mobb Deep, I saw DJ Premier, like I saw amazing hip hop acts. And then they're like, oh, Machine Gun Kelly's in Vancouver. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I've heard about him. Let's go check it out. He was incredible. Seeing Machine Gun Kelly live, one of the most charismatic like performers, stage presence I've ever seen. And I've seen Rakim live, which is like my gold standard. And look at him now. He's doing like the punk thing. He's come full circle. Like, I don't know how much of like you would call that authentic punk, but it's still like it's poppy, and it's not what he was doing 10 years ago.
I got a lot. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with that. So like, where do I start? Okay, so like, I really think what's happened in the last 10 years with hip hop has almost been like a punk thing in hip hop, because like, basically, like if we go back to SoundCloud rap, it's like, how do we define SoundCloud rap? It's like, what are the main criticisms of SoundCloud rap that like detractors have to say about it? It's like, they're not rapping, they have no rhymes, the beats suck, and it's like, it's punk,
and it's super low production value.
It's punk. It's against everything that traditional hip hop is supposed to stand for.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's no values. Like they don't care. It's about whatever they want it to be. And so like, that's the contrast that I always drew in my head with it, is like, I saw that as punk. I saw that as hip hop's punk moment.
Wow.
Like,
I never thought about it that way.
Or even hip hop's hardcore moment, because hardcore came from basically like punks being tired of punk. Like punk was all about like, it was against the grain for a while, but eventually it just got to the point where it was like, you're just dressing up to look cool and say screw the government, and you don't care about anything, and you're just getting drunk and like doing dumb stuff and like whatever. Hardcore was like, we don't need to dress up, we can wear Nikes and a t-shirt and like we can make music, and it's not about all this stuff like that you think it has, like punk has to be about. And I think like with SoundCloud rap in the early 2010s, and even Chief Keef, like and even Waka Flocka. Like I remember when Waka Flocka first came out, like people, like I was like,
those guys were huge back then.
Yeah, and it was like people were like, this sucks because he can't rap. I'm like, this is insane. This is the best thing I've ever heard, because it's like, it was against the grain, and I think that's what it appealed to. Now we fast forward to now where it's like alternative culture, like hip hop culture and like SoundCloud rap, and like I guess kind of went into like emo rap, and it's like alternative culture and hip hop kind of had this intersection where it's like emo culture kind of got revived through SoundCloud rap morphing into emo rap, and like now the weird kids listen to emo rappers instead of emo bands or like punk, but now they get into it because like so much of it is adjacent and like connected now.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now, but it's all coming together. Like I'm really seeing what you're talking about, and all of these parallels are really, really obvious now. Like,
yeah,
dude, all these like I was listening to the new NBA YoungBoy album, and like that to me it sounds emo. It feels emo. To me, like the way that he's singing very lazily and just like very emotionally and just like that's not fucking hip hop.
No.
But then he'll throw like a verse in it too, and it's like, wow, like look at how they're combining all of this stuff. Those guys are the guys that were wearing skinny jeans 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But they're rapping now.
Yeah, and I think like pop music too had this moment where like I think it's moving away from it now, honestly, but like rap, it was like pop music and rap were so intertwined as like the top rap songs, and they still are rap, but I think it's kind of other things are starting to take its place. But it's like if we go back to the MGK thing, it's like I respected MGK because of his story and his persona. It was like, I'm from Cleveland and I was broke and I built my stuff and I can rap, and that was cool. But like when you're 30 or in your 30s and then like you're acting like a punk, and it's like you're not from hardcore culture or you're not from punk culture, and like it's like, bro,
that bothers you because he's those posers that you were talking about a few minutes ago that are just embracing a culture that's not really theirs or riding with some wave, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, and I do have positive things to say about it. Like, I like hearing guitar music on the radio now. Like, I like Emily Rodrigo, like Good For You. Like, it was...
Oh, that was a smash.
It was a great song. And like, it's great to hear guitars in pop music again because we didn't have it for so long. And like rock has been dead for so long. Like rock has been dead. The guitar has been essentially dead. And like, I feel like emo rap has kind of brought that back into the forefront. And now with the pop punk kind of thing, people experimenting with that, there's like good and bad things about it. It's like, it's good because it makes people like, instead of being like, okay, I want to be a musician, I'm going to be a rapper. It's like, okay, I'm going to be a musician. Maybe I'll start a band now, because like it used to be like that because people would be like, I want to be a musician. So I'll get a guitar and I'll start a band, or I'll sing like and play guitar. But then like now it's like people just will get a computer and they'll be like, I want to make music. I want to be a rapper. It's like, that's why that music took over, I guess. I don't know.
That music took over because it was the easiest to make. You could get away with not having any musical background by making that type of music. On the contrary, someone trying to make like an authentic band where somebody who knows how to play scales and knows like root notes on a bass line and stuff like that, and someone who knows how to do like drum patterns, that shit takes years to learn
and
develop.
five people
and five people that are all schedule. Committed.
Yeah, so like it makes sense that solo artists kind of took over and like that kind of music took over. But yeah, like it's cool to hear rock and guitar music back on the radio and stuff, and like in more involved in like mainstream culture, because for a long time it was like Skrillex. You remember that, like when it was all EDM, like everything.
I remember like the dubstep days too, like in the early 2010s, like dubstep was like really big. That went through a movement, and that again is like kids that just on a laptop. That's laptop music. It's just you're programming, little MIDI clips in a sequence and like pitch shifting stuff, and it's all like there's nothing really musical to that. It's a lot of it is really just playing around in technical stuff that you can experiment with and then come to some sort of a finished product. And it's crazy because that seems so easy versus what we were just talking about, the like, oh, you're a skilled musician. Like, I wish that was respected more. I wish, like, you know, the people that spend decades like refining an instrument, you know, that's kind of lost right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that that's always never been the most important thing, especially in music and culture in the West. It's always about the spectacle. The spectacle is always the first thing. It's never about the musicianship, really. I mean, people appreciate that, but like, even we go back to like, when did pop music start? It's like Elvis, or like earlier, like Little Richard. Like,
sure,
it's the spectacle. Yeah, like at the end of the day, it's entertainment too. So like, that's what people care about, and like, that's what they're gonna connect with. But yeah, I also agree that like, I love seeing proficient musicians, and I love like hearing stuff that's like, wow, like I can't play that.
Yeah, I mean, like the rock days where like rock was the pop, like the Van Halen days where there's like virtuoso musicians on, you know, and like I'm not versed in that genre whatsoever, so I'm going to sound like an idiot here, but you know what I'm trying to talk about, right? Like that era, like what are we talking about, like 80s, 70s, 80s, where like rock was huge and there were just like amazing bands filling arenas.
It's totally like a Rick Beato
and nobody there was, they didn't get there by like faking it. Like everyone in that band was like the best at what they did.
Yeah.
But we don't see that anymore. Like,
yeah, like I get that, but like also like take a guy that can like do a Van Halen solo and be like, make a song like Future. He can't.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think we need to give artists credit just for what they do, because like it's not easy to do what people do. I don't know, like
it's not I don't know if it's accidental to mumble your way to a platinum record. Like, I feel like there's actually some sort of genius in that. Like, on the surface, 100%. It looks, like the Future example, or the Gunnas of the world, where it's just like, what in the fuck? Like, on the surface, for me, coming from like a Nas, Jay-Z, Eminem background where like lyrics mattered and rhyming skills were everything, and then seeing these guys, I'm just like, how are you even selling a record? You know what I mean? You can't rap, but there is actually under the surface some sort of something going on there that people are connecting to.
Because there's other elements besides technicality that people can appreciate.
I think that's what it is. It's the feeling almost of the whole thing that matters more than anything.
And the spectacle, but like, it's like the feeling, and like, I mean, if you break down that, like, what are the elements of a rapper's voice? Like timbre, like cadence, and like, if it's about punk and if it's about being the antithesis to what good rap is, it's like, was mumble rap appealing? It's because instead of being perfect, it's imperfect.
Totally.
And that's what makes it attractive, because it's like, it's catching your ear because it's effortless. It seems effortless.
Right.
It's almost like, how do you put it? It's almost like when, like, you see someone doing something and they're just such a natural at it, and like, that's what's appealing about it, is like, it's very organic, I guess. You know, I don't know.
No, I think I know what you're saying totally, and they make it look so easy, where it's almost like it looks effortless, it looks lazy, and then you try and do it and you're like making a mess of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So no, it's fascinating to me. It really is. I'm still trying to. For me personally, it doesn't appeal to my taste, like this new generation of these rappers. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. As to like
rap
how it's become
back,
so
though.
Popular.
Like, I like rap is like rapping, like rappers rapping is definitely like, I would say the SoundCloud rap thing is pretty much dead. Like, new rappers now are like barring, like spitting bars, like even if it's over trap beats, and they're like, or they're like drill rappers from Chicago, like they're rapping and like it's fire. Like,
I like the new Joey Badass album wasn't bad. Like I mentioned the Logic album again. Like he's come from a hip hop thing, and then he went a little more pop for a bit. But like his new record is just straight like 90s, you know. And I'm liking it. I can't think of too many more examples off the top of my head. I mean, there's most of the rap playlists and on Apple Music are you know, Drake and Future and Gunna and like, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I always explore it. Like who from Chicago have I been listening to? Like PGF Nook, I think that's his name. He's cool. It's like just some super crazy drill shit. My favorite rapper of all time is Nicholas F. though. Still
don't even know that name.
Okay, so Nicholas F. Like, all right, I'm gonna be a stan for a second, but so before Drake was Drake, well, he was Drake, but like before he blew up, he was on MySpace. There's a dude named Nicholas F. and Drake hit up Nicholas F. on MySpace, and they ended up doing 3 mixtapes together before Drake blew up. And fast forward to now, Nicholas F. has like 5 LPs. He's got a record. Do you know Lil Ugly Mane from Richmond, Virginia? Okay, he's like a producer, rapper. He's got a record with him. He's got a record with Obliv. You know the producer Obliv? No? Okay. He's got a record with him. Yeah, and he's just like this crazy rapper. Like his whole discography is insane. He produces like, it's my favorite music. It's like some of my favorite music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's just like, he never got picked. I don't know what it is, if he got like, just didn't have time, or like the industry wasn't interested in him, or he wasn't interested in signing any deals, but he's got like five LPs maybe, and like a couple like EPs and stuff, and his stuff is crazy, man.
Oh, cool. I'm definitely going to check it out later.
Yeah, I'll send you a link, but yeah, he's from Richmond, Virginia, and it's like kind of like an overlooked city in hip hop. That's where I believe, I don't want to get screwed here, but there's a lot of rappers from there, like from there.
Yeah, not the stuff that I'm into. But I, you know, you do hear that name. You hear Virginia for sure. I don't know about Richmond specifically, but
yeah.
So is Nicholas F. like, him and Drake collaborated before Drake blew up? Was he still, and was he on that like combining the rap with the poppy hook stuff?
No, so his roots were like battle rap.
Oh, okay.
So he was on I can't remember what it's called, but there was like a battle rap show on like MTV or like BET or something, and he like was the top guy for like a number of weeks or something. And that's kind of how he like gained his early recognition. His albums are like very like eclectic, I would say. Like he can kind of make everything. Like he can do some melodic stuff, he can sing a little bit, he's got the craziest bars I've ever heard. Like he's got bars for days. Like his production choices are brilliant. Like I could listen to his whole discography forever and just never get bored.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would really like it.
Nicholas F.
Yeah, just Nicholas F.
Well, that's next up on my playlist for sure. So we definitely, before the show started, we were talking a little bit about, we're going to go back to metal now and rock.
Yeah, no way.
About like the production of your EP. And I'm super curious about, you know, how you put together a metal project as far as like production. And I know you were the engineer, right? Like you mixed and mastered it.
I mixed and mastered it. I did not engineer it.
So we're like, you didn't record it.
No,
that's what we're talking about when we say engineering. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you would like talk me through like a little bit of outline of the band a bit, and then maybe like how it all came together.
Sure. So my friends, so Eli does vocals, Byron does drums, Christian does guitar, and then Kurt does other guitar. I met Eli when I first started going to hardcore shows. And then him and Byron wanted to start a band that was like influenced by this old school metalcore kind of stuff from the early 2000s, late 90s. I joined the band and they had most of the songs written already. Who did we even record that with? Oh yeah, we recorded with Jack Thomas in Coquitlam. He engineered it, and then we kind of wanted to keep the budget down, so I was like, I'll mix it. I've only mixed like 2 or 3 bands, and like it's a whole nother animal from mixing rap or like pop music. It's like rap, you might have like 15, 20 tracks on the high end.
Yeah.
Like
especially some of the trap stuff nowadays is super minimal.
You might have like 5 instrument tracks and then like 2 vocals.
Yeah.
So it's like clean.
Like
band stuff, like just drums alone. You have 2 overhead mics. You got 2 snare mics.
Yeah.
You got a kick mic. You got tom mics, and then you might have another room mic. So that's
I mean, I remember learning how to track drums at Nimbus, and it wouldn't be uncommon to have 16 mics on just on the drums alone. So it's a whole nother game, really.
So then like guitars is like typically now what people will do is they'll record your amp, but people will also record DI at the same time and then blend with like an amp sim and your guitars. So you might have like at least 4 guitar tracks if you have 2 guitars, one on each side. Bass is very simple. Bass is bass. You almost always record bass DI.
Now, when you guys are recording this, is it all the band in one room with like baffles to separate you, or are you guys recording your parts separately and then mailing in like the stem of the bass?
There's a lot of ways you can do it. The way that we did it is we'll record a scratch track to a click, like with guitars and drums, and then the drums will get recorded first to that click, and then have some guitars in his headphones so he knows what's happening.
Sure.
But yeah, typically we figure out the tempo with a metronome. Drummer records the drum tracks, and then we build it out like that. You don't have to do it like that. Like I mean, there's so much you can do with engineering now, but like that's how we did it. Yeah.
Okay. And then at what point do you decide like we're done with the recording, with the production? Is that like, is there one person, do you have like a band leader, or do you guys come together and listen to the roughs and be like, okay, this is done now? Like,
yeah, I mean, honestly, the first record was pretty rough. Like it was pretty budget, and like I know, like listening back to my mix now, I'm like, oh, like that could have came down 2 dB, and like, oh, I could have done this or done that. But a lot of people kind of like the way that the record sounds kind of bad. Like it's kind of reminiscent of those early metalcore albums anyways in the late 90s, where it was like it wasn't very compressed, or like for some reason you can't hear the guitar that well and it's just kind of raw. So some people, I think that's kind of like was part of the thing that people liked about it. It's like not super polished.
It's got a underground sound to it as opposed to like high production value, but that's not a good or a bad thing. I mean, there's still a lot of like undergroundy hip hop records. There's some of my favorite albums ever. So it's a taste thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we did that. I mean, looking back now, maybe I would have liked to have it a little better, but it's out there now and it's fine, and we can move on and do stuff now the way that we want it. Dude, drums are crazy though. Like our drummer, I'm like, I love Byron, but he's so picky. So it's like, even on this latest record that came out, it's like with drums now, like producers are almost always at least replacing the samples a little bit.
Sure. Like
they're tracking the drums, and I can't remember what plugin it is, but it just takes the waveform and you can just get a drum sample and replace every wave.
Totally.
Snare hit with a snare.
Drum replacer, slate trigger. There's a bunch of them. Yeah.
It's really hard to get a good drum sound that like doesn't sound too sampley, but like doesn't sound bad. It's very hard.
It's an art.
And so
for sure.
And especially in metal, like now, because it's so easy to just slam the drums, quantize, and replace all the drums with samples.
Yeah.
A lot of records you hear now just have like pretty fake sounding drums. And it doesn't always sound too bad, but like when I hear a snare, honestly, the thing that matters the most is the snare. All the other stuff, like it almost always sounds the same anyways, even if it's not sample replaced. Like, but if the snare sounds fake, it's like I notice it.
Totally.
If there's not enough room, or there's not enough like timbre of the snare, or just like the EQ on it is like funny or like too high on the high end, and there's not enough body on the snare. When I hear a really good snare in a metal or a hardcore record now, I'm like, yo.
Yeah.
Because it adds, because the snare is the thing that drives it. The snare is almost always hitting on
Absolutely.
the full, like the 2, and it adds so much character to it, and it's like make or break. So I don't blame Byron for being picky about the snare, but
yeah, the snare is like on a man's suit. That would be like the tie. Like it's either like out there and bold and like colorful, or it's reserved, and like the snare just speaks. It says so much about the character of a song, especially in hip hop. Like but in metal too. I mean, it really like it. If it's off, like the record's off almost.
Yeah.
It's so not underappreciated, but it's so important, like getting the snare right.
Totally.
And so were there samples on when you mixed this?
You know,
the EP
actually,
or
for this one, I didn't use any samples.
Okay.
I just tried to like do my levels as best I could. The worst thing that happened, I think, is like my kick, I think I mixed the kick a little high on it. Like, and because it's metal, like if I play it, like I'm like, oh, that kick is like loud. But other than that, I'm fairly happy with it.
What were you using? Pro Tools, Logic?
I mix it all in FL Studio.
In FL Studio, okay.
I am a diehard
Wicked.
FL Studio guy.
Yeah.
Shout out to ImageLine. They're like free updates for life, and they're getting better. They're adding features that people have been asking for as far as like playlist and like for mixing and stuff. So it's getting a lot better, and all the tools are there to use. And I just like, I would use Pro Tools. I just don't have the sub. And like, I'm pretty familiar with Pro Tools only because I've sat in on so many sessions where people are using Pro Tools. I'm like, and it's pretty straightforward to use.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mix it in FL Studio. And
can we go a little bit deeper into mixing for a minute? I'm really curious. Sure. So FL Studio, and like, do you have you said you've mixed a couple bands before this, but not a ton. So do you have like go-to plugins? Do you have subscriptions? Like, for example, I have like the Slate Everything bundle, and I have all the Fab Filter stuff, all the Sound Toys stuff. Like, what do you like to use?
I like to use UID stuff mostly. I like to use Neutron stuff. And then I use like a lot of Sound Toys.
Yep.
What else do I use? And then like Brainworks, like SSL, like all that stuff.
Cool.
Just because like the plugins, it's literally the same programmers as UID, but like I can just buy a plugin for $30 instead of having to buy a $200 UID plugin.
Sure. Yeah. And plugins nowadays are so great. They're all so competitive. Like, so okay, cool. And so when you're, this is a topic that's been getting a lot of, I don't know, just maybe it's my YouTube algorithm right now, but like at what stage are you mastering it? Are you mixing through a limiter because you know you're the one mastering it and you just want it to be loud, or are you mixing it and then saying, I'm done with my mix, now I'm gonna master it? Like, do you do it together?
I prefer it to do that way. Like bounce, like print the mix and then have just one file and master it that way. It is more time consuming because I'll get into the master and I'll be like, I need to readjust that.
Sure.
And then I have to open up my mix again. Readjust one thing, and then maybe I'm not as organized as I should be, so then I make a change to this, and this is automated, so I actually have to fix that, and then making one change ends up taking me like...
Yeah, that was a problem I used to face quite a bit. So I do it the opposite now, where I like 50% through the mix, I'll just throw a couple of limiters on gently and then mix through that so that I know what it sounds like pushed up against the limiter a bit.
Right.
Because that always changes the tone and things like that, versus getting to the end of the mix, taking my mix, mastering it, and then hitting the limiter and being like, whoa, shit's fucked up. Now I gotta go redo it.
Bringing out this weird frequency or like...
But some people say that's the totally wrong way, and the way that you're approaching it is actually like traditional. So
there's no wrong way to mix or master anything. It's
all
crazy. There's no rules, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
There's principles you can follow that make things easier, but like you can do some crazy stuff and get away with it. Like whatever works. And I'm a big believer like in using your ear. And it's kind of wild that like people don't understand this, and like this is a very abstract concept that I'm gonna get into here, but like people want to do stuff, but they don't want to spend the time doing stuff. and then they wonder why they're not doing the stuff they want to do. So it's like, if I break that down, it's like, you want to be in a band or you want to be a musician, like, go to shows and like spend time at shows and like go to every show. Like, go to every show, make your physical presence that like be there, meet people, get involved. Same thing with music. It's like, you want to learn how to mix for 10 years. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
You're not
mix
gonna,
for free. Just get practicing,
mix for free.
get
like,
your reps in.
You have to, like, your ears have to learn what like 2 dB of compression sounds like when you adjust an attack knob. Like, and it's not going to happen in a year or two. I mean, maybe if you're highly skilled and you figure it out, but like for me, I didn't even know what was going on. I mean, I still don't know what's going on. I like, yeah, you just have to keep learning and keep.
I know what you're saying. People want the fast route. They want the easy alternative. I heard one Gen Z person call it growth hacking, where they just like, they want to go from step A to step B that would normally be 10 years in like 6 months.
Yeah.
Without the, the trials and tribulation and the letdowns and the, the angst and the failure. But like, fuck that, all that shit's so important, and you grow as a person that way.
Yeah. So especially with mixing, like, an audio, it's like one of those things. It's like, I don't think you can teach that. You just have to like learn what like saturation sounds like on a drum bus, and like how to use that as a tool to make your mix sound better. No, 100% agree with you, and I can definitely speak for myself. Like, it has taken me a long ass time to get to the point where I just even feel comfortable now with a mix. I'm still always like, I'll never be done with it. And I just finished mixing a hip hop album, and I'm listening to it in the car today, and like, it's great. And the artist literally said, yo, this sounds amazing. I can't wait to put this out. That should be validation enough for me. But I'm still like, oh, like, I could, this could come down. I got to fix the S's on the chorus. It just never ends. But the better I get, the more I'm hearing now. It's like, instead of having 2 ears, I have like 8 ears. Like, I have all these new senses that I didn't have 10 years ago, where I can hear like reverb, and I can hear compression, and I can hear depth, and all these, you know what I mean? Like, it's opened up so much, and it's created so many more problems. Like, as a result. Like, I would say, like, even like only in the last 2 years, I've been able to like mix something that I'm like comfortable releasing. Like, I mixed up my own single when I released it, and like, it's like a kick track, a snare, a hi-hat, and like a guitar track, and like maybe 2 vocals and bass. So simple. But like, I was pretty happy with that, and I was like, oh, maybe I kind of understand how this works now. But that's not a great attitude to have. It's like, if you think you know everything, then you know nothing. If you think you know nothing.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Because it's funny, I'm always like feeling like I'm leveling up, and then being like, yo, me 4 months ago, like, compared to like where my skills are at now, it's like night and day. And like this void never seems to close. It's just I'm going deeper and deeper, and there's just, the knowledge base is getting bigger and bigger, and it's just like, it's so exciting. I love being on this journey, but I'm like, where's it gonna end? Like, am I ever gonna just be like, okay, I'm good at this now? Probably not, because there's always like another new thing to learn, or like
and I think like letting go of the idea of perfection and like chasing something, like the Buddhist concept of like craving and suffering, like, that is real shit. And you can't, like, you have to be able to like just accept things for what they are, and just let it go, and just move on to the next thing. Instead, like, you can't live too far in the future or the past. You just have to be like, this is what it is now, and this is as good as it's gonna be.
Acceptance. That's
acceptance.
So powerful, and it's getting your ego out of the way. Just being like, I did my best. This is a thing. I'm going to move into the future now. Like, this is done. I've got to let this go. I've learned tremendously from this, but I can't just keep nitpicking it till the end of time. Like it's got to be, and in 10 years from now, that thing isn't even going to be, I'm not even going to worry about it anymore. Like it's going to be gone. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to adopt that philosophy more. It's because I do struggle a lot just with like self-doubt and being so critical of my work, and it's like I'm supposed to be having fun here.
Yeah. No, you have to, man, because like otherwise like you just spin your wheels.
Yeah.
And like you look like some of the best records were, I mean, this goes, we always have these debates in the band too. And it's like my philosophy is like, don't think too hard about stuff. Like do what comes natural. Like just the natural is the best. Like forcing stuff, like combing over things too much is like redundant. It's like you can write a song and you can change it 1,000 times and you can like refine it, and you know, maybe it is better than when you didn't refine it, but like you can only do it so much. It's like some of the best songs in the world were made in like 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It just a vibe in the studio, but the mics happen to be on and they're like, okay, let's just capture this right now. Like,
exactly.
You know, not too much, not too forced.
Yeah.
Overthinking kills creativity. Like,
totally.
It's, yeah. So I'm glad I seem to be getting better at that, but it's an ongoing struggle for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that like figuring out how to lose the fear of like making stuff and worrying about what people think too is just like, you just gotta like realize that like nobody cares about you.
And it's just music.
It's just music.
Like
it doesn't matter.
To me, like when I'm working on a mix for someone, like it feels like the most important thing in the universe, that I have to get everything right, and I just want them to be impressed. I want to do so well, but at the end of the day, like 95% of the people that are listening to it don't give the fuck about the snare sound, aren't hearing the compression.
No. Yeah.
Don't care about the drum bus saturation.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they're just like, is this a good song? Yes or no? End of it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a hard thing to.
It's funny.
Let go of, for sure.
So you recently put out 2 new singles and
one single. It was a split with another band called.
Okay,
Celebration.
yeah, I had a question about that.
Yeah.
So what was the deal with you guys like collabing and putting your names in like with a comma between them?
Yeah, so it's a pretty common thing in hardcore and metal. Like bands will release split releases where it's like they each do 2 songs on one cassette or one record. Like,
oh, cool.
We did one song, Celebration did one song, and then the label put it out as
on one physical cassette.
They'll do a cassette, yeah.
Oh,
so we did a split with Days. They're a label or a distro in the United States. They're like a hardcore distro. They release mainly like hardcore metalcore bands. And then they collaborated with a UK based label called The Coming Strife, and then my friends in Calgary have a label called Wild Rose Records. So all 3 of them collaborated. They're all going to put out cassettes, different variants of it. The cassette sold out in like first couple hours from Days.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, it's crazy. It's the thing about like being a Canadian band is like it's pretty hard to get exposure in the States.
Yeah.
So like just like having them put our record out was awesome, and like it means a lot for us because it's really hard for bands because America is America, and like Americans, like they have American bands, so it's like
they're pretty set on people,
and like American bands are there, they can play shows. It's
totally
like for us, like we have to get visas and stuff. We have to plan ahead way more. We can't just hop the border and play shows.
Tons of effort. Absolutely.
And just because like hardcore and metalcore is like so American centric for the most part, it's hard to like break into the States as a Canadian band. So just having that exposure and having them put that out for us means a lot for us as a band. Yeah,
amazing.
It's very appreciated.
It's funny that you guys made a cassette because
huge,
a rapper that I'm working with right now is he's gonna do like a cassette and vinyl run.
Yes.
And I'm like, really?
Dude,
and he's like, oh yeah.
Cassette and vinyl are huge in hardcore, metal, and punk, man. Like,
so in certain scenes, like that's still, and I'm talking about like a I would say it's more of like an underground rap. It's not like mainstream trap. He's more like what we've been talking about, like punk rap or like underground, you know, just more like authentic, artsy, sort of like traditional rap.
Cool.
And like there's, you know, there's labels in the States and stuff like that that have
community, man.
That have a community and a solid fan base, and they will buy cassettes and vinyl, and I think that's fucking so cool.
That's what it's all about, man. Like, the hardcore community is crazy. Like, it's its own thing. It's its own machine at this point. Like, Sound of Fury, I just went to there's a music festival in Los Angeles called Sound of Fury. This year they had it, and it was the biggest it's ever been. Like 5,000 people, 2 stages, like all these bands playing, like almost all of them playing to crowds that like are the biggest crowds they've ever played to by far.
Right.
And like these are just like, not to minimize hardcore because I love hardcore, but like they're just hardcore bands.
Yeah.
But like, but the people who put it on have been doing it for 20 years, and they've been involved in hardcore for 20 years. So it's like, and like the people who have labels and distro are like all hardcore people and punk people that have been involved in it. So it's like it's its own like community and thing that's like self-functioning. And it's like, we don't need the outside industry to function.
Absolutely.
And there is bands that have broken through recently, like Turnstile. I don't know if you know the band Turnstile, but they're probably the biggest band to come out of the hardcore scene and like permeate they play Coachella, and then
so
like
they come from this underground culture. No, I'll call it underground culture, but smaller subculture, and they've actually broken through to what we're talking like mainstream now. Coachella is like a massive big deal, right?
And same with like a couple other bands like Code Orange. Like people in hardcore are always like, I saw Code Orange 10 years ago in a basement in Philly with like 30 people, and now they're playing Coachella, and they're this huge band, and like their sound has changed to something else that isn't just a hardcore band. But like I saw them, and it was like I didn't even like really like their record. Like it wasn't really for me. It's kind of like very experimental. It's like a little bit nu metal, a little bit alt rocky, a little bit hardcore, kind of like a bunch of different stuff. I didn't really like it, but I saw them live, and I was blown away like by their live show, and just like the lights and the production and just their choices in terms of their set list. It was amazing. So like it's really cool, like from my perspective, to see hardcore bands. Like people hate on it, but I don't really care. Like it's cool from my perspective to see hardcore bands like do stuff and like become successful and be able to like permeate something outside of hardcore, because maybe it'll bring the right people into it that might not have been exposed to it. The other side of the argument to that is like people get into hardcore through these bands, and then they don't actually know what it's all about, and then they come to shows and do whack stuff. But whatever. I try and be positive about it. So
oh well, that's really exciting. I mean, that's the dream, really, isn't it? Like, everybody wants to blow up, right? Like maybe not, maybe some people aren't doing it to get signed, but everybody is trying to get exposure and trying to like get the right eyes on them and get the right
or
attention,
just like or like play in a band and like do it and like not lose money. Like literally, like if you can do that and like live your life and like go play in a band and like come home and like
pay your bills with your band, like how cool is that?
Or not even your bills, just like pay for the trip to go on tour, like make enough money from merch sales, and like cool, like we did a 2-week tour in Europe and we sold enough merch and made enough money for this to pay for itself. Like that's cool.
But what a great experience.
And like back to the cassette thing, like it's crazy. Like my friend, the drummer for Serration, actually, who is the people we did the split with, he has a record label, and he has another band called World of Pleasure. It's like a vegan straight edge band, and they just put out an LP like with like a bunch of different color variants, but they've almost sold out, and that's like 500 copies. It's crazy, man. People, and like
in 2022,
there's such a great market for it, and I think people like, if you can get your business straight and like you know what you're doing, like there's people that want to support bands. There's people that want to buy stuff from bands to support them, because like. And like having that physical like thing, like whether it's a cassette or a piece of merch or like a vinyl, like people want that.
Yeah, I still I've held on to my CD collection. I like having something physical to hold on to. Like, I don't want a download. I want to hold it in my hands and be like, I have a thing. Like, somebody worked on this and I'm holding it now and it's finished. Like, how cool is that? To me, that's, that's so valuable. What are people playing cassettes on these days? Like, cars don't have cassette players. Like, where do you even play cassettes?
Man, like, I would say maybe like the hardcore collectors probably have a cassette player at home.
Yeah,
I buy cassettes and I don't even have a way to play them. But like, if I see a band I like and they have a cassette for $5 or $10, like I'll just buy the cassette because like, like if I can get something for $5 or $10 and support the band and I like their stuff, like I'll buy the cassette.
It's almost merch at that point. You're just like having a collectible thing that is supporting somebody that you are into,
and that's what it's all about, man. Yeah, like without supporting each other, like without like giving back to the community, it's like, why would I expect people to support me in my band when I don't support other people, when I don't buy a shirt or buy a cassette? Like, and that's what a lot of people, and even in bands, they don't understand that either. It's like they just expect, like, a lot of bands will just like not go to any shows and like just expect
people to come to theirs.
It's like, well, why? Like, why should anyone care about you? Like, like me and my friend Eli and my friend Luca, like we book shows, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now. So like we book hardcore bands and punk bands, and just like having a place for people to go is like so important, and like doing whatever I can to like give back to a community that's supported me or that like I just like want to support, because like this is our cool thing that we get to do that's fun. It's like, why would I not do everything I can to like make that happen, whether that's like booking shows or buying merch or like supporting bands? Like
put your love and your effort into it to keep it going, like because it's gonna come back to you. You're part of it in the end, right? You're actually feeding yourself.
Exactly. And I feel like that's something that kind of like pushed me away from like being interested in like rap or like not band related music, because it's like the culture around it is very much individualistic, I would say. I mean, definitively, like hip hop is supposed to be community based, and its roots, like real hip hop, like is about the party. It's about like, like New Orleans bounce. Like it was just like a block party,
it's the block party. Exactly.
It was just two DJs playing, like the Looper
people
Man,
breakdancing,
the Looper Man sample, and people having barbecue, and like people partying in the street, and like that was community, and that's like that's what hip hop's all about. But like being like making music and being a solo artist is like, it's hard to find that community, and like even, and like I just find that like hardcore it's like its own little thing, and like everyone kind of supports each other, and it's like we're all there for the same reason, because we love the music. It's like that doesn't really exist for a lot. Maybe it does, and maybe I just don't know about it. Like I don't know if there's like an indie rock scene where everyone like supports each other, and there's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. I was involved in this is 10 years ago more. No, this is like 15 years ago. But I was involved in Victoria, where I'm from. We did it was called Outright Cypher. Yeah. And it started off like 6 of us freestyling by park benches at a high school on Wednesdays, and then it just grew and grew, and then 5 years later, CTV did a news story on us. They came to the park, and then I was at Home Depot the following Monday, and people were like, "I saw you on TV rapping. I didn't know you were a rapper." So it was crazy, but that type of an attitude, that community, that was one of the most special things I've ever been involved in.
Did you guys have sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you guys have like a specific venue or a spot that was like the spot for you?
Yes. It was like a public area though. It wasn't like we didn't have a stage. It was literally like cigarette butts and a park bench that we chose to hang out at.
Yeah. So like that is a interesting concept when it comes to like space and place. Like for us, especially in hardcore and like punk, it's like the thing that dictates whether a community can exist is like does it have space, and then does it have a place to exist? Like for us, we used to have a venue called 333. It was on Clark Drive. It was like an old garage. That's where we would have shows. That place was around forever. It had a bunch of different names, but like that was like almost all of our shows were there.
Nice.
All the hardcore shows were there. So it's like when you have a regular space and place for people to commune at, that's what builds community. That's what builds culture. Like, I mean, you could probably say the same thing for Fortune Sound Club to some degree, like, or any club or any music venue. It's like you have to have a place for people to go over and over and over and over again to do the same thing with each other that are interested in the same thing for something to grow.
Yes.
So it's like, it's hard in this city because it's hard to find space. It's hard to find venues, and like that place closed down, but luckily we have another place where we can have most of our shows. But yeah, or it ends up being a park.
Yeah,
you know,
but but I just thought of something, like it's a lot tougher with bands and because you guys need amps, you need electricity.
You need a place.
You need a place. Yes. Where we were literally just, it was a boombox, or someone opened their trunk and there were beats playing out of their trunk and we were freestyling.
And that is like the spirit of hip hop. It's like, because it's the amount of equipment required is so minimal, and like all you need is a PA and a turntable. Like that's how it grew.
Yeah, sometimes people were just beatboxing when nobody had a ghetto blaster that Wednesday, like straight up, or we were clapping our hands. Like it was straight tribal shit, but it was dope, man, and it happened every week. And that was the spot, and that shit grew, and it was a community thing. So yeah, it's so important. Everybody there supported each other. We all went to each other's shows. If somebody had a show, like we were all handing out flyers for that person's show on telephone poles that week. Like it was such a great thing, like just so healthy, right? Like it wasn't a competition. It wasn't like, oh, I got to be better than this person, I hope, none of that. It was just, it felt so good. Occasionally we'd have people show up and like try and battle, and they would just get like shushed away, like, and then they'd realize like, oh, this isn't the place for me. Like it was so cool how it just flourished on its own, and everybody who was there had understood, had the similar mindset. So I'd love for something like that to happen again. I don't know, maybe it already exists in Vancouver, I'm sure, to a certain degree, but nobody's getting news coverage on it.
Yeah. I think that's what appeals to music to a lot of people, is like, well, what is it? It's like, it's a community at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's like, people don't, like, culturally, like, especially in the West, especially as like mostly white people from the West, is like, we don't have necessarily strong, some people do, but like we don't have, like I didn't go to church. Like I wasn't involved in religion when I was a kid. Like my parents were working all the time. I was expected to get a job when I was 13, and it's like, that was my culture. My culture was work. Yeah. And like for a lot of people, like music, or like a scene, like a music scene, replaces or like fills that need for community for people. And I know that's what like hardcore and punk is to a lot of people, because like I got a lot of friends that like without it, they would not be in a good place. And like, even for myself, like I got into it, and like at the time I was going through a lot of stuff, and like straight edge is a really big thing in hardcore. Like straight edge is like, you don't drink, you don't use drugs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a whole thing in hardcore where it's like, there's straight edge bands with like straight edge lyrics, and like, and then like, it's a big thing. So I think just being around that helped me quit drinking, and just like having a place to go where like I could socialize, and it wasn't necessarily about just like drinking.
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah.
Even if like there is people that drink and stuff and do drugs or whatever in hardcore, and it doesn't matter, but like just having people there that were like, yeah, I'm just here to hang out, and like I don't drink, it's cool. Like we can like bond over something that doesn't have to do with like drinking.
Yes.
Just like I'm not straight edge now. Like I smoke weed, but I still don't drink. And like just having that community and having that mindset and just like having that culture there is a positive thing, I think.
Oh yeah, you guys were in it together. You were supporting each other. You didn't feel like you were on that that journey alone, I guess. That's interesting. I have not heard of straight edge bands before.
Yeah, man, it's a whole thing, hardcore.
Because you mentioned like there was a vegan band a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
too.
vegan straight edge is a thing.
Vegan straight edge is a whole nother level.
So
I guess.
if you feel like diving into it, you can check out the band Earth Crisis. They were kind of like the big.
Okay.
They were a band from the '90s, and they were like when vegan straight edge got super popular in the '90s, like. As far as I've been told, it was like everyone was into hardcore, and then Earth Crisis came out, and then all of a sudden everyone was vegan straight edge. It was like Earth Crisis because they were the sickest band.
Yeah.
Like, and vegan straight edge is just like you're vegan, you don't drink, you don't do drugs, and it's like it was a pretty militant mindset.
Yeah.
Like, and they got super popular, and that's kind of I guess where it came from. I don't know if there's other bands that did it before them, but I'm not too well versed. I think Chain of Strength was vegan straight edge, but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what genre you're into, what style of music, it all comes back to just tribalism and human beings wanting to feel they're part of something. Like we all inherently need to feel connected to some sort of group. Like, and we're in the group and we're included.
And like a shared experience.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Like for me, like I've been to a lot of different concerts, man, like a lot of different kinds of genres of music, and there's nothing that will ever compare to seeing a band like Terror at the Biltmore with a sold out crowd with like people stage diving and just like the energy of the room. Like there's nothing that compares to a crazy hardcore show. Nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
Nothing. So yeah, like for me, that was it. Like as soon as I like went to my first, when I was younger, it was different because I was like drinking and I was like 13 and it's like you don't really understand what's going on maybe. But like when I got older and like I started going to hardcore shows again, like in Vancouver, like the first show I was at, that was like there's like dancing and like it's hard dancing and like the music is hard and like I'm like this is crazy like. And like this is just a garage on Clark Drive and their bands are just coming here and playing and like the energy of the room is just like it doesn't compare to anything, man. And like I think that's what's so appealing to it. Like even in Los Angeles, like a couple weeks ago, I didn't expect it to be that big. It was like 5,000 people, 2 stages. Like it was crazy, man. It was mind-blowing seeing that crowd and like seeing those bands play to that size of a crowd. It's like nothing compares to it, man. Yeah There really is something super special about everyone there just kind of all having an experience together, like, you know, losing their minds, just being absorbed in the music, and it's just all about the experience and the feeling. I haven't been to many metal shows or band shows, but I have had one or two, you know, really special experiences at shows. What's your favorite concert ever? Like, what's your best experience at a concert?
When I saw Rakim in London, at like a small venue.
It's gotta be a small venue.
It was like I don't know, maybe 100 people, and it was like a club, like a little jazz club. And Rakim came with his DJ, and from the moment he stepped on stage, everybody was like under his spell. Like it felt like you were under his spell. Everything he did, he was speaking with people and you were just like reacting to him. He was like a puppeteer. It was fucking nuts. And I was just like, he's controlling the room. Like move the crowd, right? MC to me means move the crowd. He literally did that. It was amazing. So, that was my most favorite live show I've ever been to. I was going to school in 2011. Before I went to Nimbus, I lived in the UK for a year and I did like a music production program there. So, and I went and saw that show, and that, kind of like was the greatest thing ever.
I think that's one of the special things about hardcore too. The magic is like at this festival, there's 5,000 people and there was no barrier between the stage and the crowd. And they even went out of their way because the stages at the venue were like head height. So they went out of their way, the bookers, to like put a waist height stage in front of the stage just so people could jump up on the stage and stage dive off of it. Yes. Like that is such an important thing in hardcore because it's about the interaction between the audience and the band and the dancing and the energy. Like if you disconnect the band from that, it kind of kills the vibe a little bit.
No way.
Like,
okay. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, I mean, if you search up YouTube, search up Sound and Fury 2022 and just like check out the videos, man. It's crazy. Yeah, it's like it's just a better vibe. And
people are mostly respectful. Like no one's jumping up on the stage and interfering with the band. They're none of that shit.
This is the thing about hardcore dancing. It's hard for outside people to understand, but it's the craziest shit you've ever seen.
Okay.
Like people will like jump and dogpile, and like people are kicking and punching and swinging. Like no one's trying to hurt each other, but they're just dancing hard and like dancing however they want to dance. And yeah, I mean, like people kind of get busted up sometimes.
Wow.
But like that's kind of part of the appeal, and the energy is like it's supposed to be like this energy that's like
you're just letting yourself go.
Yeah, you just let it go, and like people will grab the mic and like sing their part and like jump and stage dive, and like some bands, like there's like just an endless slew of people jumping off the stage into the crowd and like doing flips and like
nutty.
Yeah, man, that's nutty. What it's all about. Like I feel like having that environment where like the stage is disconnected from the crowd just like doesn't allow the crowd to be fully immersed.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The experience. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's hardcore, it's hard music. So it's like, if you want something more tame, like go do something else.
Yeah.
It's
sure.
But here it's like, do whatever you want.
Better to know what you're getting into.
Dance how you want and like feel the energy, because it's, And I think having that outlet for a lot of people is like super important.
Yeah, no kidding. It sounds like therapy. In a lot of ways, a strange therapy, but it's
so strange, man.
People letting go, letting loose.
Like you can get super like anthropological about it too. Like it's its own culture, really. Like it's got its own dancing. It's like its own music, its own style of dress. Like,
who are some of the bigger names of this genre, like at the forefront of this?
Minor Threat. They were like one of the early hardcore bands in the 80s. Bad Brains.
Okay.
You know that band?
No, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no worries.
None of these.
Like, yeah, Minor Threat. I mean, those are like the early bands. Okay. Minor Threat, Bad Brains. Discharge from the UK. They were kind of like D-beat. The biggest bands now, like, I would say one of the most important bands of all time is probably Terror.
Okay.
They're from Buffalo, New York. They've been around. They're based in LA now, but they're originally from Buffalo. They've been around for like 20 years. They've played huge fests and stuff. Hardcore's so cyclical too, like, and it's like bands will get popular for like a year or two, and then like new bands will take their place.
I see.
There is bands that have like been able to stand the test of time, like Terror, like that just last because they're so great and because they've committed to it and they've been able to like just do it forever.
Yeah. The lucky ones. Now what differentiates metal from hardcore as far as like the sound maybe, or the like, how would you describe that? Because I am so ignorant about this.
I would say that's a really good question. I would say it's more like the sound, not as important. It's more about just the culture.
Okay.
Like it's like there's a lot of metal bands that come up through the hardcore scene, like especially now death metal is getting really popular, so there's like death metal bands that will come from hardcore and like play hardcore shows, but they're playing death metal, but it's like not the same crowd as like people you would see at a metal show necessarily.
Okay.
It's like
so it's less about the music and more about the attitude and the culture, and almost
the ethics and
the ethics.
Okay.
I
would say that's what it comes down to. It's like DIY ethics. It's like a lot of metal stuff can be like very like, I don't know, like metal's, it's just not rooted in punk. It's its own culture. Like there's kind of like a set of ethos in hardcore, like whether that's vegan straight edge or whether that's like anti-racism or like DIY, like it's not about wearing a vest and having long hair or like a mohawk with like stuff all over
Patches
it. Like,
all
you
over
can
your
come
vest.
to a show and you can wear a t-shirt and you can wear Nikes
Okay.
and you can be part of it.
Okay.
Like, or it's not necessarily about that. It's more about the attitude and like,
Okay. No, that
I
definitely
guess is a way to kind of explain
helps me understand it definitely better now. Okay.
Yeah. And like like sonically there is a lot of crossover. Like,
Yeah.
there's metal bands, like there's bands that are like crossover bands, like I don't know if you know the band Suicidal Tendencies.
I've heard that name.
Yeah, so like that would be like an example of a crossover band from Los
Okay.
Angeles, which was like thrash metal, but they came up in the hardcore scene. And they call it crossover because it's like a crossover between hardcore and thrash.
All these subgenres: death metal, thrash metal.
Oh,
I mean, I'm sure there's way more.
and
but
even in hardcore, there's so many subgenres, like
subgenres of hardcore
unofficial
too.
subgenres.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
and like if you get to a big city like New York or like Los Angeles, like there will be different hardcore scenes in big cities depending on what it is. Like
Yeah.
there will be a scene for like beat down hardcore, which is like a super heavy kind of hardcore. There will be like kind of more hardcore punk. There will be like just like a hardcore scene. Maybe there's like straight edge bands and they have their own thing. So it's like within one city you could have like 4 or 5 different hardcore scenes.
Yeah. It's like dialects of languages, you know.
Totally.
When you go to Africa or parts of South America, like each village you go to is kind of speaks a little differently.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like within this hardcore scene there's that's a perfect way to put it. Like there's different little like
Nuances
there's
to
labels
each.
that put out different stuff that kind of have their own flavor that stick to kind of one sound. Yeah, man, it's cool. It's like we all put up with each other.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the band? Anything that you can talk about coming out in the near future? Any projects that, you know, you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, we got we want to ideally tour next year probably. We want to tour the States. I think we're going to try and record like 4 or 5 tracks in the fall. Yeah, that's just the plan. Whatever we can do to get touring and just go play other cities outside of
Nice.
Vancouver.
Yep.
We're going to play a festival in Calgary on August 20th called Wild Rose. That's going to be sweet. That's really looking forward to that. And yeah, man, just trying not to murder each other.
We haven't really talked much about band dynamics. I know we touched a little bit about the production and mixing, but do you want to get into that? Like, are you guys all friends, or or is this a job? Like,
Yeah, we're all friends for sure.
Yeah.
But like the thing about a band, man, is like you really have to establish from the beginning what the expectations are
Sure.
and what everybody wants out of it. And at the end of the day, especially like it's a business.
Yep.
Even if it's not about making money, you have to have some degree of like, this is what we need to do to keep this going. These are the things that we have to do. We have
Right.
to, we have to get paid. We have to sell stuff. We have to keep track of the money we're making. And it really is a business. Like with a band, man, like, especially if you want to like do stuff and like go tour, like you have to get visas. You have to apply for grants.
Yep.
You got to do photos. You got to schedule recordings. You got to have a bank account. You got to register a company if you want to get a limited company. You got to get merch designed. You have to order merch. You have to know how much merch to order. You have to know what kind of merch you want to get. You have to find designs. There's so much that comes with it. So being in a band is like an organization that's like its own thing. It's like not a business. It's not just music. It's like, it's a band. And it like,
organization I think is a key word totally, because
Yeah.
there is a lot of organizing, a lot of coordinating, and
And sometimes it's hard because with musicians, it's like a weird paradox. It's like musicians are like literally sometimes the worst people to be doing that stuff. You know?
It's so true.
It's so true.
They have such good skills for certain things and then useless at other things.
Yeah. So I think like especially in a band situation, it's hard. You have to definitely establish like what everybody wants out of the project and what the expectations are, and like come to some kind of agreement on what the best path forward is. And that's not always the easiest thing. But at the end of the day, like in our band, everybody wants to do the same thing. Like everybody it's not about making money or like getting famous. It's about playing music and just like doing whatever we can to like go play shows and like put out music and, and have fun. And like, in my view, it's fun not to lose money, you know? So like anything that we can do where like we break even and like we can get to a point where like, maybe we can get to a point where like we can go tour like 6 weeks out of the year and like come home and have a little bit of money or like pay for the tour and we're not in the hole. Like that's what success looks like to me as a band.
Yeah.
And whatever we can do, whatever I can do to facilitate that happening is like always on top of mind.
Amazing.
Because like that's what everybody wants to do. We just want to go play shows and have fun and make music.
That's healthy. That's beautiful. That's what it should all be about, really. At the end of the day, and anything beyond that is a bonus. Like
of course.
It's we chose. I like to remind myself this all the time. Like I chose this vocation. I could have, been shift supervisor at Starbucks or head cashier at Home Depot or chosen some other path or stayed in school and done something that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I chose to do music. I suffered for years not making money doing this, but I chose it because at the end of the day, I love making music.
Yeah.
And all the little victories that come with that they're magnified so much because it's like, wow, I'm actually making money out of doing my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my attitude about it. And any little thing where it's like I'm breaking even or going a little bit above even is like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
Let's
and
go.
especially in like in hardcore and like being a band is like you need to be willing to drive to like 7 hours and play a show, and there's a chance that like nobody's gonna be there and you're not gonna make any money and you're gonna spend like hundreds of dollars on gas and it's gonna suck. You just have to accept that like that's going to be probably a reality sometimes. And sometimes like on Wednesday, we got asked to play a show at Fortune on Thursday, Fortune Sound Club, because they're actually starting to do hardcore shows there.
Oh yeah.
So we didn't even plan on playing the show, but we were ready because we've been practicing a lot for our shows coming up. So, and two of our friends, two other bands, Juice and Punitive Damage, were playing the show. They needed another band, so they asked us, and we went and played the show. And the opening band is a band called Show Me the Body. They're like this weird, like experimental noise kind of hardcore punk thing. The guy has like a banjo, but he plays it through an amp. It's really weird. You gotta see. You can't even listen to it, like because it's so weird. You have to see it live.
I see.
And like I didn't even get it, and then I saw them live, and I was like, okay, this is crazy. Anyways, pre-sales sold out on the show.
Yeah.
And we were the first band, and Fortune's cap is like 480. So like before we even went on stage, there was like pretty much capacity at the venue.
Unreal.
And so moments like that where it's like you just have the right attitude, and like we could have been like, no, like we don't want to play a show. It's too last minute. Like we're probably not going to make any money. We could have just not played that show, but we ended up playing that show, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
In front of
it was one of the best shows we've ever played. The sound was amazing. It was like there was like a real sound guy with like monitors.
A real sound guy.
Yeah, so like I could hear like everything that was happening on stage, and like the crowd was lit, and there was so many people, and we met a lot of people, and it was cool, man. So like I think if you're doing music for the wrong reasons, like you just have to, it's not going to work out. You just got to be there for the right reasons. You just got to be there to enjoy it, and be there, ups and downs.
Be there to enjoy it. Be there for the journey, not for the whatever destination you might have dreamt up.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, I'm 28 years old and I'm like in this weird DIY venue that doesn't have a bathroom playing hardcore songs to like 15-year-old goth kids. Yeah. like, what am I doing?
What am I doing? How did I get here?
But like, I enjoy it, and like, it's fun, and like, I love all the friends and all the people I've met through it, and like, I don't know what else I would do right now. I'd probably find something else to do, but like, somehow I just fell into it.
Yeah, no, you're doing it, and you're enjoying it. Like, do what makes you happy, man. Do what makes you happy. There's so many people that go to jobs and work for a boss and punch in and sit in a cubicle and then go home and don't feel any sort of accomplishment in their lives.
That too.
You know? Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
I do that.
I mean, we all do to a certain degree, but if you can, the more you can squeeze in the things that actually make you happy, you know, and make sacrifices to do those things, I think the better off you're going to be. It's like, it's so important. Amazing. So what else do we need to talk about before we wrap this up? Tell me a little bit briefly about the new single, because I heard a sonic difference definitely between the EP and the new single you guys put out.
Yeah, so we had our friend Andre. He engineered, mixed, and mastered it. Or wait, no, someone else mastered it. I can't remember the name. Sorry, but yeah, just like a little bit better of a recording. Something that's a little more palatable. Like, we definitely were not open to having good sounding music sonically, mix wise. Yeah, like,
you guys recorded that at his home studio, you were telling me about?
There is a guy, Andrew, I can't remember his full name, but Dre just rents out his studio to engineer at. Because he's got a console there. It's an SSL console. He knows how to use it. So when he does engineer stuff, he uses that studio, and it was really great. Yeah, dude. Like, I really enjoyed the process of recording that song with him. I really like working with good engineers. Yeah, dude. I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, it sounds really, really good.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's the one that's on the cassette with the other band.
Yeah.
So a high quality item. Yeah. How many, out of curiosity, how many copies did you guys get made of that cassette?
I think Days started with 20, and then I don't know how much Wild Rose is going to make, and The Coming Strife is not doing their production run until the end of the month. So maybe there will probably end up being like 100.
Cool.
Depending. I don't know if they're going to repress it or not.
Yeah. And you were saying you sold out like right away.
It sold out like right away. Like, they posted it, and then like within like an hour it was sold out on their website. It's only 20 cassettes, and like they have a pretty good fan base and audience. So, but it's just cool to me. Like, even our first cassette, like our first record, The Coming Strife, released it, and they did a pre-sale, and they did like before before it was even out, like they did like 40 pre-sale cassettes and like 20 CDs or something, and like 20 t-shirts. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, man, it's cool. Like, so like having labels and stuff, and like, it's just cool that people are there to support our music. Like, I'm super grateful for it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Support local talent.
Yeah.
Put into your community.
Yeah.
Dude, this was so much fun.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I learned a lot about new genres and things that I hadn't previously ever had a chance to talk to about. So thank you for enlightening me on that.
No worries.
And one more time, it's A Mourning Star. The new EP's out and the new single is out. Go check that out everywhere.
Yeah.
And Tyler, thank you so much, dude.
Thank you, Max.
All right, Demo to Limo. We'll see you guys very soon. Have a great week. Peace.
Peace.